Awesome. I think I'm on. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here. I'm Sam. I head the design team at Chime, and I'm so excited to talk to you about shifting your culture from one of critique to one of workshop. So before we dive in, a quick introduction. I'm Sam, as I said, a big fan of the bathroom selfie. I am really, really passionate about workshopping, really passionate about all things design, and just so excited to be here with you today. I am an award-winning design leader. I have spent the last 15 plus years working in and around Silicon Valley at a variety of really awesome places, and have built my career on designing experiences for consumers. So everything from phones and tablets and TVs to cameras, wearables, voice UIs, screenless UIs, spent time working on AR, VR, autonomous vehicles, and most recently have really been focusing myself in the world of fintech. I'm passionate about building design teams. I've done it at a variety of places now, everywhere from small venture-backed startups to medium-sized consulting firms to large publicly traded companies. But I just love bringing people together, kind of creating my band of weirdos and making really awesome stuff. So I'm talking to you about a thing that I'm really passionate about that I do with all of my teams, which is shifting from a culture of critique to one of workshop. So we've all been here, right? Maybe close your eyes, think back to art school or maybe your first couple of years in your career. You're young, you're excited about the work you've just done, maybe nervous about presenting it to a room of teammates. Maybe you stammer through your presentation. There are some ums, there are some likes, kind of wiping your sweaty palms on your pants, steeling yourself for this onslaught of critique that you know is going to be coming. And at best, maybe you survive, right? You kind of walk out. You've gotten a few nuggets of critique that were helpful, and you're maybe a little bit emotionally damaged, not looking forward to the next one, but you're not totally scarred from it. At worst, though, you're walking out because you're feeling dejected. One person's critique piled on top of another person's, and you just feel terrible at your job, right? Like we've all been there. You walk out and you're like, man, that sucked. It feels like you know nothing and it really stings. But what if the opposite could be true? What if instead of tearing each other down, we built each other up? What if presenting and talking about our work was an opportunity to inspire collaboration or to inspire innovation? And what if instead of pointing out every little thing that was wrong, people found ways to plus it, to make it better? What if we could really team up and generate new ideas and feel like we're in this together instead of in it individually? That's the workshop culture that I'm talking about. And that's the culture that I like to build my teams around. So if that's the culture that you're looking for, then this is going to be all about those tips and tricks to help you start making that shift. So rule number one, I feel like this is an obvious one, but rule number one is start with yes and. Some of you might recognize this as playing the rules of improv, and it is. I'm not going to lie, I stole it a little bit. But in a critique culture, we're really quick to start with no. We're really quick to point out the things that are wrong, and we start tearing down. So what if we did something different? What if we started with what was working and added a way to make it better? For example, what I love about your idea is how much it focuses on the user's needs, and what would make it even stronger would be if it equally focused on the business needs. So why does yes and work? Well, first off, the and part promotes acceptance, right? It's validating. It says to the person who's presenting their work, yes, you did something right. Yes, you worked hard. Yes, there's a really interesting nugget here. Yes, I am into what you're presenting. And then you and it. It inspires collaboration. It inspires innovation. When you and it says, I'm here with you. I've got your back. I'm helping out with this idea. And when you say and a bunch of times and you add and you add and you add, you finally get to something really, really interesting. That's where the innovation comes. This is a lot of fun to do in person. It's also actually equally fun to do over Zoom in this world that we're all operating in now. And you can see an example here on the screen of how I ran a yes and workshop with my team a few months ago. We had an Excel spreadsheet, and in the first column, we all listed all of our ideas. And then in the next column, we had a yes and the next column, another yes and we had, 4 or 5 different columns for yes and, so that folks could just keep adding and adding and plussing until we got to some really, really interesting nuggets. I also have Cinderella's Castle here. This is a very famous example of yes and of plussing, which is a term I'm stealing from Walt Disney. Walt always said that if you wanted something, that he thought of ideas as things that could live, something that could grow, that could keep plussing. And he thought of the park as that. And the Cinderella Castle was this thing that just kept getting more and more and more incredible with all of these different yes ands, all these different pluses, up until that last moment of really adding that gold to it. And it's now this striking, incredible entrance into the park. Rule number 2. Speak with intent. This one is really important. When giving feedback in a workshop culture, the intent of the feedback is to help the person move forward, to help the project move forward, to help the person get better. We're not just speaking to hear ourselves talk. I mean, how many of you have been in the room with the CEO or whoever it is who feels that need to chime in to say a thing, right? Or to sound smart? Or even how many of you have done that? How many times have you heard something in a workshop or in a critique and you pile on, you're like, yeah, I also feel like that's not going to work. And here's why. Like, is your adding to what someone already said actually giving somebody more better feedback that they can work with? Or is it just being said to talk? So how can you bring more intent to the words that you're using? Instead of just saying something that pulls the work backwards or doesn't give a clear next action, like that color of blue doesn't work, can you actually flip your feedback to something positive? Like, if you use a darker blue, it'll be easier to read. Or even better, instead of prescribing and say, hey, how about you use a darker blue? Can you say something that will move the work forward and offer a learning? Like, have you considered how that shade of blue might affect contrast and legibility? Oh, that's so interesting, right? That gives the presenter the nugget of, oh, I should be thinking about contrast and legibility. And now that I am thinking about it, what should I do? Oh, I might want to go a darker shade of blue, but also I might just want to go to a black. And then they still have the autonomy to make their decisions, but to make decisions in a way that is going to be better for the work and for the outcomes. Rule number 3, create a safe space. One of the most important aspects of a healthy culture is the environment in which it lives. So in person, we used to do really fun things about creating safe spaces, right? Maybe there are inspiring visuals on the wall, calming lighting, soft music. Over Zoom, that can be a little bit harder. But you can do things like having everybody take a deep breath before starting, or starting with an icebreaker. I actually find that taking a deep breath to be a really fun thing to use. It seems really small, but when you're on back-to-back Zoom meetings all day, which a bunch of us are, you kind of get into a meeting and you're a little bit frantic and you're not necessarily in a creative space or in an open space. You're not really ready to hear what's happening. You kind of need a minute. And I found that just by starting a meeting by saying like, hey, why don't we all pause and take a deep breath makes such a difference. And people all of a sudden are way more present and excited. Safe space also is not just physical, it's emotional. Playing the yes and game, rethinking the intent behind your feedback, all of this is uncomfortable and it's unnatural. And if you haven't done it a bunch of times, if the folks in the room haven't done it a bunch of times, it can be scary, right? So one way to make this a safe space is to model that behavior. Your vulnerability and leading with that vulnerability can show others that it's fun to try new things. And also it's okay to make mistakes. Sometimes I make a mistake in the room. I don't start with yes and I realize I've messed it up. And I like to go back and say, hold on a sec, let me rephrase that. Yes and also, here's a new thing that you can add. Another thing in creating your safe space, don't be afraid to lay out ground rules. And this is kind of somewhere where I've really had my own personal learning. So when I first started at Chime, I was really excited about this idea that we're going to do these big design workshops, that anybody at the company could come and see what design is working on. And in particular, like I sent this invite to the entire company. It was on our company calendar. We use this big open space at the top of our office. We put all our work up on the wall. Our CEO could show up, engineers, PMs could show up, but people from legal and compliance could show up. Our office manager could show up, recruiting could show up. I really wanted people to feel that design was not happening behind a wall, and that was it was a welcoming and inclusive environment for all. The problem with that being that not everybody knew how to play the yes and game, and how to show up and give actionable feedback that moved work forward, and how to be intentional with their feedback, how not to just pile on. And so we actually got into this place where our workshops were not really helpful for the designers. They were walking away not feeling like they had what they needed to move forward, or they were walking away feeling like their work had been torn down. So what we started doing was actually saying at the start of every workshop, hey, everyone, welcome in. We're so excited you're here today. These are the rules of being in our workshop. We say yes and. We're intentional with our feedback. We're not afraid of not giving feedback. We give feedback that moves the work forward. We don't prescribe. We don't solution in this meeting. We never take the pen out of a designer's hand, but we give them feedback that helps them think critically about their work and helps move it forward. It set ground rules of engagement. And so it gave people a chance to say, oh, I don't feel like giving feedback that way. Okay, I'm not going to stay in this meeting. It also, though, gave us a way to hold folks accountable, which was, hey, we've laid down the rules of engagement. And if you're coming every week and you're not following these rules, I'm very happy to ask you to leave. And of course, that was something I would do one-on-one after the fact, not publicly. But we did really hold this space sacred. And honestly, even at a last resort, or maybe not as a last resort, maybe as a starting place, it's okay to workshop with just designers. It's okay to say, hey, this is the safe space for designers and other creative folks. And we'll invite you in when we're ready for you. But for now, we're going to do the thing that is right for this team and makes this a place where people want to show their work, where they're excited to show their work, and when we know they're going to come out with better work and as a better person. One last thing here, it doesn't hurt to have a plant or two in the audience. So when you have someone like Jocelyn who says that she loves doing yes and in her meetings, she would be that person who I would talk to ahead of time and say like, hey, can you sit in our workshop this week and be the first person to speak up and give feedback so that you can model the yes and behavior for other people? Having a few folks who are there who are comfortable showing others how to act will help early sessions strike the right mood and really set that momentum for your other sessions. The last thing I like to think about in creating that workshop culture is creating a brave space. And a brave space is different than a safe space. A safe space is important, and it should be the starting place for all of your sessions, but it shouldn't be the final product. I want you to push past the boundaries of the safe space into the brave space. And I think oftentimes the word safe suggests not taking risks. It suggests not asking the difficult questions. It suggests that you're not opening yourself up to vulnerability. But these are the table stakes of a productive workshop culture. You have to get outside your comfort zone. I'm not suggesting you get into a danger zone, but you do have to get outside of your comfort zone to really grow and to get better. When we get outside that comfort zone, we become better versions of ourselves. We become different versions of ourselves. And as a result, our work gets better. It pushes boundaries. It becomes innovative. It becomes interesting. So let's review. You've learned all of the crucial parts to moving from a critique culture to a workshop culture. You're going to start with yes and. You're going to speak with intent and really consider the outcomes and why you're saying the things you're saying, what you're trying to help somebody do with it. You're going to create a safe space as your starting place, one where the people presenting can really get the feedback that they need and they deserve to move forward. And you're also going to move past the safe space into that brave space where you can be vulnerable, where you can make mistakes, where you can get honest feedback that is invested in your growth, and where you can invest in other people's growth. and getting better together. So let's pause here. We started with this art school scenario, walking into this a moment where you're presenting your work, where you're kind of sweating and you're scared and you're worried and you're trying to get at it unscathed. But let's reimagine that. Let's think about a young designer walking into a creative space. There's soft music playing. They're excited to present their work. In fact, they're even anticipating the feedback they might get from their team, considering all the ways that it's going to help their work evolve. In the workshop, the designer's hard work is validated with people saying yes. Their intentions are heard and they receive feedback that moves the work forward. They're so inspired by what they heard that they rush back to their desk. They can't wait to evolve their designs, and the output is better. The rest of the team even feels ownership over this designer's wins. The business sees better results, and the team comes together as one. Sounds pretty incredible, doesn't it? You've got your cheat sheet right here. So what's stopping you? I will stop there. I hope you all have a bunch of questions. I know there was a lot of active chatter going on in the chat, and I really hate talking at people. I way prefer having a conversation. So what do y'all want to know?